From PSR to SCR, are Newcastle any closer to competing for the major honours? Find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Oh, brilliant from Cher. And now Murphy can take on the shot. Fabian Cher
All right, folks. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys are having a blessed week and a great start to the week. As always, always a privilege and a pleasure to be doing this show with you guys. Whether it's one person in here or 50 people in here, or one day 5,000 people in here, you never know. I'm blessed to be doing it with you as fellow Toon fans, Newcastle fans. We're on this journey together. So always a blessing and a privilege to be doing it with all of you. And as always, folks, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you've chosen to be right here with me. So God bless you, folks. And I'm really excited about today's show. We are going to be talking about the new football financial regulations that are coming into this summer. It's no longer PSR, the PSR, Profit Sustainability Rules, and now it's the SCR. And I'm trying to remember what the squad cost ratio, essentially, that is going to be coming in. And we're going to be talking a lot about that in terms of how's it going to impact the summer? Is it better than the PSR? I'm gonna field test it with with what my predictions are for the transfer window going forward, and seeing how it could work out in terms of Newcastle spending and incoming. And the bigger, wider question is: does it bring us? How does it bring us? And does it bring us to any closer um, to competing for the major honors? That's what we want to be doing. That's what we want to be at as well. So big kind of start to the show we're going to have, and we're going to be doing a scouting profile of two players, of two goalkeepers actually, going forward towards the end of the show. So do look out for that. But as always, folks, it's an absolute blessing to have people in the chat. Even before I even start the show, good evening, or good evening from here in the UK. Is Ches. I think it's your first time to the show. I see a message from you saying, "Hi, first time watching, fellow South African man. God bless you, Ches, man. Welcome to the show. I'm glad that it's popped up on your feed, or I don't know if you said it's first time watching. I'm glad that it's popped up on your feed and you're here to watch. God bless you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do look forward to having you comment in, hopefully subscribe and whatever, as long as you know, like the show. And I always tell people we do have, as a smaller channel as we are, we do have international fans, international mags, as well as international opposition fans that come in to watch the show as well. So that's why I always put UK time, this 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. UK time whenever the show starts. So welcome, Ches. And Ches, do let me know what time it is in South Africa. I'd love to know. James, is always good to see you, sir. God bless you. I mate Phil. I love it when I say that I mate. I know that's my man James, man. How are you doing, sir? I hope you are well. God bless you. James says Italy and Denmark both going to penalties. Sandro is going to be one time. Well, I don't know if you can find out from me, James, because my mind was that international would finish somewhere this week, but we've got another week before we start the next game. So I always had it in my mind that the players will come back and Eddie Howe will have at least another week of them before he starts training. So if you have any idea, if anyone in the chat knows, because that's the that's the hope I have for Eddie Howe has a week, maybe 1 week of Automata as well. So and everybody else really going into the show. So that's my hope. James says we're definitely moving to our to our Youth of Gold movement by the sound that I've heard from Hopkins, to our youth Youth of Gold movement by the sound of Hopkins. Was he talking about the academy or something? Let me know, because I know like under 16s won a tournament that would beat like Chelsea and I want to say Man City or Man United, somebody big. And I've been told this. I remember you guys like a couple of months ago that don't worry about our under 21s and stuff like that. It's our under 16s and under 15s that are like, really, really the ones to look out for. And they're showing it as well. So let's do it. Big up, Ches. God bless you, sir. Ches says we're only 1 hour ahead of you. Oh, okay. Okay. So it's 11:22 at South Africa. Ahead of you since your clock changed 2 days ago. Oh, yeah. I should know that as well. To me, the days are all merging into one. James says using under 19 players and then building players for profit, and that's going to be that. Okay. Then they've been planning to do that for a while. Actually, you're right. You're absolutely right. Well, since we're talking about players and selling players and strategies and everything else, PSR is dead. Long live SCR. What does it all mean? How's it going to impact Newcastle? We want to see. We want to talk about it. We're going to test it as well. So, as I've said, for tonight's show, we're going to be looking at what changed in Premier League rules with the SCR, what SCR actually means. So, simple terms. It's going to be very simple, very concise. I try to do it the best way I could. Try to understand it the best way I could. I'm no expert at it by no means at all. I had so many questions. From my previous kind of estimations of PSR. Obviously, we had tons of information from various sources, Craig Hope, journalists, Matt Ziegler, everybody else. Everyone's putting different bits about, for instance, us selling our stadium. Are we broke? That's why we selling it, or are we essentially selling it to ourselves because we don't want to put the financial burden on the club itself? What does it all mean? We're going to be talking about that. So what does it actually mean? Why Newcastle supported it? It is supported by Newcastle. We did vote for it. We were one of the folks that were pushing for it, and there were indications from our CEO David Hopkinson in various meetings where he kind of mentioned it. It's in terms of a long-term strategy and long-term plan, and I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to narrow down the hammer on it. Why? Why specifically? Because it's not all rosy with SCR. I'll say it from the beginning. Like, it's not all like the gates are it's flooded open. Far from it. But there is is there a method behind the madness is what we're trying to understand even more, essentially, and how will the club behave, really. So why Newcastle supported it? My 2026 transfer model, for the folks that aren't aware of that, what it is, that's what I'm kind of speculating and I'm thinking is going to happen going forward. So I've kind of given an overall view where I think Newcastle will spend somewhere between like 300 and 325 million plus, and I think we'll probably get around 305, something like that, million in income. I'll break it down. I'll show it to you guys. So if things were to work out something that towards that way, how would it work on PSR? Excuse me, how would it work on SCR? But also versus PSR, which one would be the better model, kind of thing. So does it work financially, which is what I'll be asking, and what happens next in terms of the next 2 to 3 transfer windows? Because this summer window is pivotal, but then a successful transfer strategy, successful transfer policy works 2-3 transfer windows in advance. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. And I'm going to read the chats in a moment as well as we go along. So please do continue to send it in your chat. So PSR problem. So essentially, why are we moving off from the PSR model in the first place? And it's not just Newcastle, obviously. The Premier League has to vote on it. I can't remember because they rule by majority. So I don't know how. Obviously, more clubs voted for it than not. So I want to know Why is that the case as well? So why but then specifically why Newcastle felt restricted? So part of it is the 3-year loss rule, and past spending counts. So PSR is the just in a kind of boiled down essence, essentially, is with a 3-year loss rule. So, for instance, season 22, what were the losses then? Obviously, it functions on the loss situation, amortization, various costings. They all go from 1 year to the next year in a 3-year cycle. So once the 3-year cycle is finished, the last of the 3-year cycle drops off. But then whatever costings you occurred the following year, that it's all added. So it's all spread out through that 3-year cycle. And if once amortizing mean that the spread costs are the spread of the cost is passed on. It's kind of like if you don't pay your full rent bill, whatever whatever's left from that rent gets passed on to the next month, gets passed on to the next month, gets passed on to the next month, and you got to figure out various ways of how to pay it off. So the way it was designed. It was a cost measuring mechanism. If you're trying to plan and trying to build, you're essentially having to constantly look back and pay the bills behind you in order to try and go forward. But it's very difficult to plan forward and go forward because you're always having to deal with the bills and the costings of the past. And what this causes is situations where you get forced player sales. So people remember the situation with Elliot Anderson, who's now reported to almost be going for 100, so between 70 million to 100 million to Man City or to who are Man United, whoever. One of our own academy players never wanted to leave the club. Never ever wanted to leave the club. We never ever wanted to sell him, but because of PSR, because of because of the 3-year loss rule, because of the past costings and everything else, we had to sell him. Otherwise, if we didn't, it would be a points deduction situation for us. Same with Yankuba Minte. He's very good now, isn't he? And we knew that he was very good. That's why we bought him in the first place. And just going back to one of the chats that said, we're kind of going back to the situation where we want to buy under 19-year-olds and plan for the future. Yankuba, we bought him when he was 17. Sent him to Eindhoven. His metrics, a lot of analysts were super, super excited about his metrics. I'm going off on a tangent, but super excited about his metrics. But we had to sell him. We had to sell him together with Elliot Anderson in order to make up for the previous year's costs. Otherwise, face the deduction. So we can never look forward. And the fact that we had to sell our youth is almost like it's ironic that we had to sell our. It's a tragic irony behind it that we had to sell our youth because and we're unable to move forward because we're always having to pay for the mistakes of the past. We have to sell our youth to do that. And asset restructuring, things like having to sell our club to ourselves, which we've done recently, and in order to make up for the PSR bill. And we're going to go somewhere deep into that in terms of like why we did it. And part of it was to pay off the PSR from the past. It is the case that had we not paid, sold St. James's Park to a company called PHZN, something like that, which is PIF's company, for 171 million. It's not true that essentially that would have like been way over the mark, but it would have been either very, very close or just over had we not sold our club to ourselves. But the secondary or primary, depends how you want to look at it, reason for it is that whatever the owners didn't want the costings for the new stadium that we're going to build to land on the club itself, to be a debt on the club itself, but on this other company, rather than obviously on the club itself. So on PHZN, all the costs for new St James's Park for the new stadium will be on there as well. It actually should be exciting. Sounds like we're building a new stadium, folks. Right? So we should be excited about that. We're not out on the streets doing that. We're all kind of figuring out what's PSR, what's SCR, and stuff like that. But that's what the plan is. So that's the problem with PSR. In essence, it's a financial regulation that always caused not just Newcastle, but clubs in general to have to always look in the past, to always have to look in behind them, to worry about what they've done before, and made it very, very difficult for clubs and everyone else, for Newcastle especially, to move ahead. It's part of the reason we're going to go into it why we haven't made certain commercial deals that we could, why we haven't, for instance, bought the stadium naming rights and things of that nature, because partly because of that, because of the way the PSR works, and it wouldn't have helped us grow. It would have actually just be the money from that would have been used to pay the costings from the past rather than going into the future. Right. So what is SCR? And I forgot to give my visual for that one, but what is, oh gosh, forwarded again. So what is SCR? So in bare essence again, and I'm going to go to the chat after this in a moment, is what is SCR? So it's essentially squad cost. So the overall cost of the squad, which includes wages, which includes the amortization. So if you can imagine, say we buy a player for what is amortization? So say we buy a player for £50 million in a 5-year contract. That cost for that player is spread over the 5 years. So 10 million 1 year, 10 million 2 year, 10 million 3 year, 10 million 4 year, 10 million 5 year. That's the amortization. That's the costing that's been applied. Why it's called amortization is that because it's not real. It's not real. I sound a bit like a Morpheus from Matrix, but it's not real. Meaning, on paper, Newcastle are spreading the costs and paying for the player, but in reality, we could have even paid off for the player in one bite or over like a 2-3 year period. But in order to spread the cost and to spread the cost so we can fit the PSR bill, that's how it looks on paper. So that's the amortization that player. So that's what's divided. But so that's what amortization is. So it includes wages, amortization divided by the revenue. So whatever the revenue the club achieved, which I think this year was going to come to around 330, something like that. 335 million, something like that. We're going to get into it. And the target is that, well, there's two targets. You can see there, we can only spend within between 70 to 85% of our revenue. Now, the 70% is the UEFA rule, which I don't know why. I don't know why they made that rule. I partly suspect because they know that the Premier League is the richest league in the world, and they want to hamper the Premier League because we keep on getting, instead of 4 clubs, we're getting 5 clubs in. We're getting Europa League clubs coming in. If Villa win the Europa, how many more clubs come in? That's what my suspicion is. That 70% of that squad cost ratio is the UEFA rule. So only 70% of those percent of our squad cost can play in the UEFA, whilst 85% is for the Premier League itself. So 85%. So say, for instance, in the very, trying to think of an easy math for myself, really. So say, for instance, Newcastle, I'll make a nice round number for myself. Say Newcastle made 300 million. We made about 330 plus, but say Newcastle made 300 million, right? That is was 85% of 300 million, essentially is 225 million. So 85% of 300 million is 225 million, which means this is the transfer budget for Newcastle in that summer. But that includes wages, and that includes player fee and everything that's associated with, in terms of actual purchase of the player itself. So it's not just like the transfer fee itself, but it includes wages, includes the player fee, whatever, agent fee, and everything else on top of that. So that's the budget for it. So the idea is that you spend what you earn, or at least a part of what you earn in that season. So rather than so the idea is, rather than the PSR where you're looking at the past and spread costs, you're having to pay off the bills before. The idea of the PSR, of the SCR, is to spend what you earn today, but also to project, so go forward, in terms of your revenue, to plan for the future in terms of what you project your revenue to be, and to be able to spend according to that as well. So Newcastle, we're going to be going into it. We'll be obviously we'll be spending the money they have for this summer according to the revenue that they have, with a thought in mind about future transfer windows and what they expect their revenue to be. Because if they expect their revenue to go down the other way, they're going to have to adjust what they spend today. If they expect to continue to go up, then they'll adjust their costs towards that way. And we're going to talk about different things that help, obviously, your revenue to go up. So let me know. Let me see in the chat where you guys are at with this so far. Before we go on to the next slide, which I think the next slide will be around PSR versus SCR. So which one is better, essentially? There are tons of messages. So I won't. Wow, there's tons of you guys that have come in here. I won't be able to get through everybody, but I'll do my best. It's only really. Ches says it's really not much better. While SCR, it simplifies the rules. It fundamentally shifts the battleground from limiting losses to maximizing revenue. That's exactly it in a very good nutshell. Yes, absolutely. Ches says, which still favors the clubs who spent the last decade inflating their global commercial value. Right, exactly. And that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about the future. What does it mean, essentially? Yeah, James says, from what I understand, us selling the stadium as a secondary company looks like the club are going to move for a bank loan to build a stadium using St. James's Park as collateral. Yes. But my understanding is about the costings. Yeah, so whatever it is on the company PHZN rather than obviously on the club directly. Ches says, clubs not in European competitions are capped at spending 85% of their revenue on squad costs, but if you qualify for the Champions League or Europa League, that drops to 70% to align with UEFA. Exactly. The only thing I need to know is about the rules themselves. So, say for instance, Newcastle spend 85% of the budget. When they actually enter the European tournament, do they put this? Are they only allowed to? I think they're only allowed to register the players that are 70% of their budget. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ches. Let me know. We'll get there. I think I saw Adrian somewhere. Big up, Adrian. Good to see you, sir. God bless you. Chair says the problem for us is if we break into the top four, our revenue is still significantly lower than Big Six. We've seen the slash squad cost down 70%, who simultaneously needing a better squad to compete. It is a balancing act, and we are going to kind of talk about that in a moment when we kind of test the model going forward as well. I think I see Ian McKenna. God bless you. Good to see Ian. Ian says it would be Arsenal, Man U, Man City, and that's it. In terms of the revenue, I feel like I caught the middle of the conversation there. Nobody else will financially have a chance. But there is a reason why Newcastle voted for it. So let's see what happens. He said Ian said he's very drunk. All right. So that's the SCR in a nutshell. The idea of it, in essence, is to spend what you earn now and to look forward into the future. Revenue is king. Revenue is king. Right, so PSR versus SCR. Past versus present. So on the left, you got all the features of PSR versus all the kind of features in a nutshell versus SCR. So PSR is based on losses. It's hence why I'm looking into the past, whilst SCR is based on revenue. Now, why, again, thinking about the owners, why do the owners want this? Well, partly because you're able to plan for the future and your investments essentially have a better chance of having an impact and growth. So whether you're making commercial deals, where you're buying stadium rights, whether you're um, putting a training ground sponsors, buying a training ground, rather than the funds and the money coming from those commercial deals, for instance, being used to pay past losses. It's being used now to generate more revenue going forward. Generating more revenue then gives you more opportunity, gives you more financial headroom to spend more money. So I think that's part of the reason why. So essentially, our owners, Newcastle owners, are backing themselves to generate more money. As I said, PSR is backward looking. SCR is in real time. So what are you achieving this? So what's your revenue? Uh, what's your revenue by this June the 30th? Essentially, we just had a 24-25 accounts, which we took into account. And obviously, Newcastle owners will know what the 25-26 one is as well. So they'll be planning ahead for that as well. PSR can be managed via sales. So if whatever losses we had before, for instance, we dealt with player sales in terms of your Elliot Andersons and with your the sales of Jan Kubuminte, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing. Obviously, it really hurt us in terms of that. Whereas SCR is a bit more harder to manipulate. So it's meaning that yes, player sales will matter, and we're going to talk about it as well. But the impact of player sales on revenue isn't as great as it was in terms of dealing with losses previously. So there is like limitation. The impact isn't as great. Um, PSR punishes early investment, and why we've experienced that is the big investments that we made in the first two, three transfer windows. The players that we bought, the Champions League that we achieved, the League Cup wins that we made. You know, we've been punished for that because essentially we kind of reached our financial ceiling from those games, from that time on. I think even when we won the League Cup and going forward, we weren't able to spend for three transfer windows in a row. We did not buy a first team player for three transfer windows in a row. And if you guys remember, there's all sorts of conversations about, is PSR fit for purpose? Our squad growing stale, getting older, us not being able to make signing was just crazy. Whereas SCR rewards growth. So commercial deals, building or expanding your stadium, building training grounds, tournaments around the world, and shirt sales, various other kind of global investments and global products, and all this other stuff. All of these things go into your revenue, which rewards growth, which rewards the growth of the club. So that's the idea. That's the kind of the features behind it. Now, let me know, folks, in terms of from that, like which one, from hearing this, which one would you prefer? Which one would you like? Which one are you kind of like, or hold fire? The other thing is, you can always hold fire and see what the rest of what we're going to be saying in the rest of the show. Ches says, Philip, your explanation for why this is better for us makes sense. But doesn't it mean that the top six still have the same linear growth, still keeping us behind them? Great question. The answer is yes. And I'm going to be showing a highlight from Talksport of Simon Jordon talking about how it's virtually almost impossible at this stage to catch up with them in terms of revenue. And even if especially with the starting points where we are at the moment, some of them clubs where twice our revenue is twice as low, or some of them are twice as high as ours, or treble at the time, so it's hard to catch up. I was going to talk about it a little bit later, but in terms of revenue, yes, that we won't be able to catch up as is the next 5 to 10 years, essentially. What it's going to come down to is regular Champions League football, regular European football. SCR rewards growth. It rewards future growth and future investment. So getting your investment correct in the players and the recruitment that you have is going to be rewarded. So if Newcastle get into the Champions League or into Europe, that is going to be rewarded in the future. So the more you get into the Champions League, if Newcastle get into the Champions Leagues for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, yeah, the revenue will grow. Our ability to buy more players will grow. And there is only so many players and so much money you can spend on players, right? So there's a tipping point where I was going to talk about a little bit later of how much money you need. Liverpool spent 500 million, but that's like an outlier. Most elite teams are going to be spending between 300 to 400 million in transfers, and to get there in terms of revenue, we need to get to where that particular revenue is, and I'm going to show you kind of going forward where that is as well. So in essence, no, we're going to catch up with them in terms of revenue. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, it kind of, in a sense, it doesn't matter. What matters is being able to compete on the pitch. What matters is to get to a particular tipping point in terms of revenue, so we can spend elite money on elite players. We will feed this guy. It says Kings. The crowd. Said if Simon Jordon takes glasses off his Ian's giving me jokes, man, crazy. So I hope that answers your question, Ches. Let me know if you've got any, if you want to add anything to that. Right, so PSR versus SCR, essentially going the PSR being the going backwards, PSR going is a backward looking model, whereas the SCR is a forward looking model. Now, Newcastle strategy, kind of drilling down. In this slide, I want to drill down why Newcastle backed SCR. This is a Newcastle backed model. Now, some might say it was the only model. What if there was an option to say, how about no financial rules or very limited financial rules? which model do Newcastle do? What do Newcastle vote for? But alas, we don't have those options. The options that we do have is SCR, and Newcastle backed SCR. So what does it mean? All right, so why Newcastle backed SCR? Three couple of reasons. We're going to go into it. The revenue growth model, we talked about it. It's a forward-looking model. And if you think about our owners, and like I said, why we haven't made certain financial commercial deals now, as I said earlier, stadium naming rights, training ground naming rights, commercial deals on the training ground, various other sponsors. It's because with the PSR model, it would have been always dealing with the costings of the bills of the past, the financial losses of the past. Whereas with the SCR model, it rewards growth, it rewards revenue. So now is the time to put all these investments in building a new stadium, building a new training ground, and obviously doing the business on the pitch, regardless of all the other buildings and everything else. Stadiums, this, that, and the other. It's the business on the pitch. We're going to get to Eddie Howe in a moment in this show as well. This is where Eddie Howe comes to become very, very important. And the players, but Eddie Howe is going to be key. Doing the business on the pitch, getting into Europe regularly, year upon year upon year, you are going to be, under this model, you are going to be rewarded. So are the opposition teams, by the way, the top 6 teams, but this, if we're talking about Newcastle. Stadium plus commercial deals upside, as I explained that what these going to, now it makes sense to build a new stadium. Now it makes sense to put certain commercial deals because they're going to be rewarded in the future, and less reliance on player sales. So if your revenue is growing, revenue isn't so dependent on player sales, right? It's dependent on all the other business deals, competitions, TV rights, where they have a direct impact on your financial growth, on SCR, and that's what SCR cares about. So it's less reliant on player sales. So the belief is, the hope is, We've got less of a reliance, less of a focus on having to sell players, our future players, our academy players, which will probably be sold anyway. But in terms of like, we're not going to be selling your Elliot Andersons and Yankuba Mintes anytime soon. So the way that our ownership works, their whole mindset, the whole strategy of the PIF are a big, huge. And that's not even their whole thought process is long term. They're an investment organization, and what they want to be able to do is to invest now and see growth later. So it really, really works for them in terms of how they see things going forward, and so they're forward looking. They're kind of very forward looking in terms of that. Right. So I'm going to go to the chats in a moment. It's going to get to slide 6. So, I'll get to the chats now actually, because now because in slide 6, I want to test my model or like my speculations, shall we say, in terms of, just, it's fantasy football, shall we say, at the moment, and see how it works with the SCR going forward. But before I do that, let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Ches says a club like City with 700 million in revenue can easily stay under the 70% cap while spending 490 million. Yes, that's true. On their squad, if we have 300 million in revenue and 70 cap limits us to 210 million, exactly, it does. So we are effectively penalized for succeeding. Am I wrong? Succeeding at what? In terms of growth, not in terms of revenue. So if your revenue continues to go up, so say for instance Newcastle get into the Champions League, you add 40 million to that 300 million from the Champions League. If Newcastle win the FA Cup, you add 20 million to that revenue. If Newcastle put their naming rights for PIF at St James's Park, 40 million per year, add 40 million now more to that revenue. Newcastle build a training ground with various sponsorship deals that accumulate to about 20 million. You can add it to the revenue going forward. So on and off the pitch, you are rewarded for your success. You're rewarded for your growth going forward, but you have to generate that growth. The idea is that you have to generate that growth. You can't you can't allow it to go down. You can't let it go off. So the idea is, if I'm reading you correctly, Chet, my thought process when I'm thinking about it is if it's a 300 million revenue, all these other deals, us getting into Champions League now count towards the revenue going forward, and for me, it rewards success. But maybe let me know if I've got you right though, Ches. James says SCR gives a little bit more breathing room than PSR, from what I read, from what I understand. They want all teams to have the ability to spend on transfers. Yes, I think so too. And if the issue was before they don't want teams to go bankrupt, or they don't want teams to go bust and deal with their debts. Well, if you encourage them to grow and develop, and you're rewarding success, you're rewarding growth, then it's less likely that they go bankrupt and into debt. Ian McKenna says, I found it amusing that everyone was like, it's just buzzwords. What do they want? This time next year will be Shez says SCI is marginally better for growth, but it still doesn't create a level of playing field. It just creates a more transparent way to keep the current hierarchy exactly where it is. However, I choose SCR. Yeah, and it depends on what you mean by playing field, doesn't it? So say Newcastle in the last 20 years won 10 Premier Leagues, multiple Champions Leagues, we became a global elite club. And I'm not saying that you're saying this, but when someone says playing field, do they then expect a financial model to be created where they expect an upcoming club, an upstart, essentially, to then have the same how do I say it? To then kind of start from the same period, kind of place. That's the argument. Somebody will say, well, if you got the owner to do it, then you should be able to do it. I don't know. Um, I'm on the fence about that. I do agree to the point where, like with you, where whatever financial model is created, it allows you to at least to compete, to then force a level playing field, meaning that we can compete with them as well. I think, and we're gonna, I keep on saying we're gonna get into it, but I haven't fully made my conclusions about how much SCI helps you do that. But what I do understand is, in the best scenario, which is Newcastle getting to the Champions League multiple years in a row, it rewards that. It rewards that via revenue growth. And if revenue grows, then so does our ability to spend and to buy more players. So that's how I'm kind of looking at it. So into the chat, into the thingy magic, into so I'm gonna test my theory, my model for the folks that aren't aware. If you're gonna force, I've sort of given my early predictions. So I need a lot of drinking water and everything else. I don't want I'll lose my voice or anything like that. I've given some early predictions. Now, I'm not saying that all these players are going to go or all these players are going to come in. I'm trying to, I've used, the articles linking us to various players and kind of got an average uh, price range, incomings and ingoings, and in terms of those players. And I've added them up to see what they mean. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, player exits, right? So I think, the likes of, I think we're probably going to lose two or three of our starting players. I've got Jordon, Livramento, Tonali. Some of our other players, the likes of Kraft, Shaw, are going to be exiting, plus some, medium sales like Willock and Osola as well. So I've you can see the average cost between them. Gordon 100, 120 million. Livramento 60 to 80 million, Tonali 80 to 100 million. So I've used the kind of the median cost between them. So the Tonali is on 80 to 90, to 80 to 100. So I've got him as 90 million. And so I've accumulated all these median costs between them. And when I've put them together, it came up to 305 million. There's one that I haven't included in that, but I'm gonna in terms of me testing the model, and that was, I think I included Wissa. I've included Wissa in that as well. So it's going to cost a little bit more, but you're going to see it in the workings out. Then potential incomings as well. Same idea, but obviously I'm kind of guessing by the players that we're linked with. They've been talking about us bringing in 8 players. I've got 6 to 9 players. So I've used the costings for 9 players at its max, which will cost us about, if you put up all the median costs between them, but they're gonna round up to 325 million. So when you see me doing the costs and using this model, this is what I'm talking about. This is what it's come up to. So this is my model, and I'm going to test this model to the SCR and the PSR itself. So I'm predicting so far this summer that Newcastle, like I said, earn about 305 million in sales, and they spend about 325 million between on about 8 or 9 players coming in. Exits include, like I said, Gordon, Tonali, Livramento, Trippier, Shaw, and the likes, for instance, as well. So what would that mean? Couple things. So what actually changes? So a couple things change from that. Wages that are removed from that, or the place that you saw, is about 45 million. Amortization removed. Remember, the cost that spread is roughly 30 million. So that's the book value that's been, or the amortization that's been removed as well. And the new cost that is added from the players that are coming in altogether is going to be around 120 million if you add their wages and everything else on top of, if you add the cost that's going to bring in, that's going to be brought onto that. So the net squad cost obviously is not including agent fees. It's a guess. I don't know what the agent fees are going to be. For instance, is will be around plus 45 million. Now under PSR, this is very good. Remember, it's you're allowed 105 million loss. This is more. This is a plus 45 million going the other direction. So you're plus 45, essentially 150 plus million. You got a roughly like 150 million pound financial headroom to spend, and that's not 150 million. That's if you imagine, like I said, you buy a player for 50 million and spread it over 10 million over 5 years, 10 million. You add that 10 million to the 150, you can still buy about 10 other players for 50 million essentially. So it's very, very good for PSR. So it's strongly positive for PSR, this particular model. If Newcastle were to do that. So does this work under PSR? Does this work on the PSR? We have to figure out, or have to add a couple of variables to this, is because PSR is different, obviously. Europe, what it looks under no Europe. And what I want to add, and you can see at the bottom, is includes Champions League carryover. So part of the guesstimation is, or the guesstimation is that the money that we got from Champions League, being in Champions League this season, some of it, especially the qualifying rounds, would have been added to the accounts of the previous season. The rest of it, stemming from 2026, would have been carried over into this season. So the revenue that you see in front of you, 390 million, if Newcastle were to get no Champions League, no Europe this season, is 390 million. So that's a guess. If it's lower, then we're in trouble. If it's higher, then we're in good stead, right? So it's a guess as to what it could be. So if you test this model under PSR, under SCR, with no Europe, Newcastle have a revenue of 390 million, right? Which puts us 83% SCR. So in Premier League, that's good, right? And it doesn't really matter that it's 83% because we're not in Europe. So it's not going to cost us when we're going to Europe. If we get into Europa League in this season, again, thinking about the next summer, if we're getting into Europe, and if we get into Europa League in this season, and the projected cost from there, the revenue goes up a little bit more to 410 million, so 79% SCR. If we get into the Champions League, our revenue could go as high as 450 million, and we are into 72% SCR. So this is why being in Europe, especially Champions League or Europa League, but Champions League more so, you get so much more rewards for doing that. And getting into Europe is so much more important. So Newcastle growth plan, for instance, so squad reset. So I lost myself there. There was a part I missed there. It missed a slide for me, but essentially, here we go. So here we go. So essentially, if Newcastle have a revenue of 390 million from the summer from the Champions League, I mean, you can imagine what 85% of that would be, which would be roughly say let's round up to 400 million. 85% of 400 million. Jeez Louise, my maths. 60 million take away 340 million. So Newcastle will be able to spend, for instance, around between 320 to 340 million, right? But that's before sales. But that's just like for one window, right? So that would be crazy. That they shouldn't do that because they've got to think about 2-3 windows ahead. And if you're the owners, then you probably reduce that and say you probably got between 200 250 million spending, right? And if you don't get into Europe next season, that goes even lower. So it's important that whatever money that we spend now gets us into Europe, right? So that's how it kind of works in terms of that. So let me just, I'm losing my slide here, but essentially it's rewarding us for what we're doing in the future. Let me get my thing back. So, where is my slide? Here we go. So yeah, it's roughly, I got my costing right. So it's roughly Newcastle can spend between under SCR, can spend between on 85% around 250 to 300 million. But obviously we wanna be smart in terms of being able to spend going forward. So be between 210 and 255 million in terms of what we're doing going forward as well. Apologies, folks. I got my slide wrong and everything else. But that was the idea behind it. So on the surface of it, I think my initial thoughts about it is, yes, under PSR in the short term, i.e. this transfer window, you can spend more, but it doesn't reward future growth. If you get into the Champions League, all we're doing is that we're paying off the losses from the previous year. Whereas with SCR, should we continue getting into the Champions League, whatever we paid for previously, the revenue not only goes above that, but it still gives us a continued, hopefully even an increase in spending power. Should be continue getting into the Champions League as well. So that's how it's working essentially for Newcastle going forward at the moment. Right. So, but it would be tight. That's the other thing I wanted to say. It's not on here, but if you just give me a moment, because there was something I wanted to say about that. There was something I wanted to say. I think, where is it? 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 Because I wanted to say something in terms of, I wanted to drill down in terms of what it's looking like for this summer. It is around 250. Well, if we spent the 325 million, that's it. So if we spent, let me find myself. And this is where it gets a little bit tight, because I wanted to show something in terms of why essentially Newcastle would have to sell a little bit more with my current model. So if Newcastle had to spend 325 million, if Newcastle had to spend 325 million, and I've lost it, I had it in a slide here. But if Newcastle had spent 325 million, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where are you? Couldn't find it. But essentially, if Newcastle were to spend 325 million, it will push us very, very close in terms of SCR, if anything, a little bit over. So the owners would have to do one of two things. they would either have to sell like a big player, like at 60 million, or sell like a medium term player, like a Wissa, for instance, like a for 30, 40 million, because his wages are still quite high, which will put us a little bit even. So that's what I'm kind of estimating, that we might even sell more players than we kind of might originally thought. What I don't think is going to happen, some might be tempted to say, we'll get another commercial deal. What I think Newcastle want to be able to do, the owners want to be able to do when they do the commercial deals, is to be able to sell when they're at strength. So when they're in Champions Leagues, when they are not having to like sell players to get themselves out of trouble, but essentially to be able to strengthen. So I don't think they want to be able to just get deals in order to get this particular transfer window over the line. They want to be able to make commercial deals so they can get the next 2 or 3 transfer windows over the line. So essentially, in essence, the summer 2026 window is going to be a big squad reset. So I'm going to go to the chats in a moment. It's going to be a big squad reset. I do envisage a lot more players uh, going forward. There's obviously the big players that we've talked about, your Tinos, your Gordons, your Tonalis. They're going to try and avoid like more than that kind of higher tier going away, like Bruno Gomes, um, Chow, Botman, Hall, for instance. And maybe if they can get someone like a Whistle off the books, essentially. But because otherwise we'll still meet SCR, but it'll be tight. But if you make a deal like like a sale of a Whistle, there'll be less pressure essentially. The more we're getting to Europe, the less pressure on our finances and ourselves going forward, and we'll be able to stabilize costs. So I think that's what it's looking like in 26, 27. Target Europe. This year, target Europe. That's what we're going to talk about Eddie Howe in a moment. This year, target Europe. Following year, continue to target Europe and stabilize costs. And by the next by summer 2027, begin to unlock more and more revenue, adding up the revenue attributed from the previous European campaigns and league positions, without having even less and less reasons to having to make major sales, and able to grow the squad and have a squad that's able to compete, hopefully, for those major honors. So my final verdict, excuse me, final verdict in terms of where Newcastle are right now, PSR constraints are gone. So on the longer look in the past, SCR is manageable in the short term, but we need success on the pitch. Hence, you got Eddie Howe there to then make it a situation where growth. It's a growth dependent model. So we need to generate growth that comes from success on the pitch, and that also comes from having success off the pitch, which creates high seeding of revenue growth. And that success on the pitch is going to be down to what Eddie Howe does. So, am I pro SCR? Am I pro PSR? I think at the moment, I think SCR, I can see why the owners have voted for it, why they wanted it. The pressure is going to be on in terms of generating growth, in terms of generating revenue and creating growth. Part of that pressure might fall onto the fans in ticket sales and merchandise and the costing of and the costing of kits. Um, but also the better we are on the pitch and more success we get in terms of getting into Europe repeatedly on a consistent basis, excuse me, the more we have, the more we generate revenue, and hopefully the less pressure it is on fans and ticket sales essentially going forward. So I think like Ches said, and a few of you guys said, I think SCR is marginally better going forward. But it gives our owners a chance to invest and see a return on a return on their investment, whereas PSR was a constant kind of look on the past through losses. But let me know what you guys think, because we're gonna head into Eddie Howe talk in a moment, because Eddie Howe is going to be very important for us going forward in terms of a success on the pitch. And just give me one moment. I need to get my phone because I got my timestamps on a I got my timestamps on an interview or a conversation on Talksport between Simon Jordon and Jim White discussing Eddie Howe and discussing David Hopkinson and whether he's backing him or not, because all of this relates to Eddie Howe in terms of success on the pitch. Um, Ches says, see, but Philip, while 67% would be meaningless to them because their revenue is more than they realistically spend, while 70% for us is still less than City, we can't catch up. I think it depends. Um, it depends on what we do with our investment. Do we get the right players in? Do we have the right manager in? Can we successfully? I think the main thing is what I want to be able to first see us do is get into Europe consistently, right? So um, SCR rewards growth, rewards success going forward. And City have had a lot of success, to be fair to them, in the last 10 to 15 years. So when we say catch up, when are we expecting? When would you want to catch up? Would it be this summer, next 5 years, next 10 years? What's your expectation in terms of that, and how would that look? I think I want to first see Newcastle get into Champions League regularly. I think I think or at least into Europe and then Champions League regularly. We need to get into Europe this season, Champions League next season, and then the following season, especially. Can we repeat that? Right? It'd be great if we can do it today, this season. If Liverpool, Chelsea, whoever collapse, that'd be great. But if we're speaking probability, we're hopefully going to get into Europe this season, but Champions League will be next season. I want to first see how does it look when we get into the Champions League repeatedly, because that is rewarded essentially, um, and then how it looks like in terms of us competing going forward. Is it still going to be difficult for us to keep players and everything else? Probably. So how does that look essentially? Um, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm kind of still playing it out of my mind. And in fact, the interview with Simon Jordon and Jim White talks about this as well. Ches says, Phillips, off topic, which shows have you previously been on? I think I've seen you in another show about a year ago. Um, I go on to Spurs Kings regularly. I'm a co-host there. So every Wednesday do tune in. I'm on the Football Terrace now and again as well, doing reactions and things of that nature as well. I've been a couple of times, but this is over a year ago now, on Judge Mo as well. So big up Judge Mo. Maybe one of those shows. Right. So let's see what else is saying. Da, 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 da. James says, so I'm right, option Euro, but it will be a long shot for us at the moment to get Champions League position. Yeah, this year will be a long shot to get Champions League. Not such a long shot to get Europa or to get what do you call it? To get Conference League. So let's see. In fact, where are we in the table? Let me just double check. Let me see now. Where are we in the table? Let me see where we are on the table. Let me put you guys onto this. 7 games to go. So we're 12th. We've got 42 points. The 5th position is Liverpool on 49 points. So we're 7 points behind Liverpool. For Chelsea on 48, so 6 points behind Chelsea. And 7th place, Brentford, were 4 points behind them and Everton as well. And I was talking in the group chat today with a lot of rival fans. And kind of with all due respect to Sunderland, Brighton, well, not so much Sunderland, but Brighton, Fulham, Everton, Brentford, with the money that we've paid, we've spent and everything else, we have to, it's important. We've got 7 games to finish above them. You know, Brentford drew the last 3 games since beating us, ironically. No, since beating Burnley. Who did they draw to? They drew the last 3 games. Everton are going on a good form. Fulham are in decent form as well. So are Brighton and Sunderland are in mixed form. But we've had time off now, and we've got 1 game a week. And we've got a good squad, a better squad than most of those teams that we mentioned. So it's important for us to finish above them, essentially. Which does lead me on to the conversation around how. And I'm going to show you guys this video this interview between between Simon Jordon and Jim White, discussing the conversation and what David Hopkins said about Eddie Howe in terms of his stance on Eddie Howe as a manager. So I'm looking forward to hearing you guys conversations about, you know, Eddie Howe, lots of conversations about Eddie Howe in or Eddie Howe out. I'll comment that mine kind of looking at, especially looking at today's show, was about SCR and the importance of growth, the importance of getting into Europe couldn't be more emphasized. And I actually discuss it in this show where Simon Jordan talks about how, because David Hopkinson said that, you know, he sat down with Eddie Howe and he discussed everything, especially around, you know, financial rules and not financial rules, but budgets and everything else. What happens? And David Hopkins says this: what the transfer window looks like if Newcastle are in Europe, what it looks like when they're not in Europe, you know, and they kind of commended that kind of type of conversation. And I think if there wasn't pressure already, which shall always be on an Newcastle manager, the pressure to make the pressure to kind of get into Europe and to win is going to be even more now with it. And I think I've always, like you guys know, believe that Eddie Howe's a good manager, an elite manager, in my opinion. And I think part of that conversation would be him proving it, even having to prove it even more. And this last 7 games, I think David Hopkinson would be emphasizing to him how important it is he wins it. So before we watch this, I want to make sure I load up the video. There's a first part and a second part of the conversation I want to show. I'll read a few comments before we get into it. But I want to get you guys' take on this. I don't want to just, yes, you can, you know, let me know if you think Eddie Howe's the man or not. But I do want to maybe kind of deepen the conversation in terms of, okay, what kind of manager, if anything, it takes to now take Newcastle forward, especially now with our infrastructure in place. our CEO, our SD, all these people are in place. What does it mean? Ches says, that's actually a decent model, Philip. Thank you. Thank you so much. In the SCR version, you're limited to 70% regardless. Oh, you're talking about SCR. I'm thanking myself. Limited to 70% regardless of whether you're in Champions League or Europa. It's better scaled model. It is. I wanted to just confirm, but I don't know this. So say, for instance, you spend 85%. You actually can even spend up to 115%. You pay fines, but you can do that. I wonder what it means in terms of, can you still buy a squad under 85%, but when you register them for the Champions League or for Europe, can you register 70% of your squad? I think that's the part I want to know. That's the part I need to confirm. I might do this while you guys while we're watching the video as well. Peter Reid was always man of the match. I never understood why. Okay, that's something different. This doesn't include sales. James says, I guess this doesn't include sales. This is just net spend. Let me know what you mean, James. I feel like I'm in the middle of a conversation there. Big up, David. Good to see you. God bless you. Dave says, yesterday we sell our ground to ourselves after 3 years of why are we not doing this? And you think they now have a plan? I don't think they wanted to sell the ground to themselves. I think when you're having to sell your ground to yourselves, that's like a hit the emergency button for me. That's not the ideal place to be, right? I didn't think they wanted to sell their academy, Elliot Anderson or Yankuba Minteh, but they had to. I think they wanted to sell the likes of Callum Wilson and Almiron a whole lot earlier, but they didn't get to. There's been a few kind of situations that really derailed them as well, like this transfer window. I think all of that kind of accumulated into that situation where they've had to sell the ground to themselves. But like I said, there was a secondary motive to selling the ground to themselves, and that is also to be able to put the costings of the new ground on the club, on the the separate company they created with PHZN, rather than put it on the ground, put it on the club itself. So I think there's definitely a plan. I definitely think there's a long-term plan. Dave says the owners have been slow to do what is needed. I think they've been strategic, and strategic means thinking long-term. They haven't got everything right. I'll agree with you, but that happens with growth, isn't it? But they're very, very strategic in terms of going forward. That's why the certain commercial deals haven't been done so quickly, so earlier, or they're going to wait till they get into Europe a lot more regularly before they start doing that. Training kit sponsor and stadium sponsors are a huge loss. Well, I think you missed the part. You missed it, Dave, but we were discussing this. But essentially, stadium sponsors and the training kit sponsors made little sense in the PSR model, because the PSR model was always about the club having to pay its losses from the previous season. So it never rewarded going. It was always backward looking rather than forward looking. The SCR model is forward looking. It's looking at revenue and going forward. And so it makes more sense to then have training kit sponsors, stadium sponsors, new ground, new training ground, because the revenue, because of the investment in that, will be seen in the revenue, which will be rewarded under SCR. So meaning that the revenue will grow and you'll have more financial headroom to spend. If we sold the ground to ourselves ages ago, we still have Anderson and Minteh. Yes and no. So we could have Anderson and Minteh, but we probably would have had to sell someone else down the line that we might not have wanted to sell. Like, the PSR model was not giving us any options, in my opinion. I read them come more, and let's start talking about. I want to start kind of still keeping on SCR, PSR, and everything else, but in terms of success and going forward, our manager Eddie Howe is the man for that. Ches says, I think it's all well and good increasing ticket prices, but the owners need to show more improvement on their end with training ground sponsors and bigger stadium and naming rights. And I think they've got more. I personally think the SCR model gives them the opportunity to do that. And remember, the reason why we sold, part of the reason why we sold the training ground to ourselves is so that we can build a new football ground as well. So I feel like that's all underway. Couple more and we'll get into it. Chair says, I'd give Eddie another season with the backing of a well-run club with proper recruitment team and DOF in place. His main mistake, but this season wasn't all down to him. He's had one poor season. I agree. And I don't even think it's that been that poor a season. I think the last 7 games will determine how poor it is. But remember, we haven't, as Newcastle fans, we've never seen the last 16. We've seen it again. We've seen it for the first time. We've again made it to the last six, to the semi-finals of a domestic competition, second, third season in a row. And there's still an opportunity to finish in Europe for the second season in a row, which we haven't done in years. So imagine, put it this way, Chess, put it this way. Let me know what you'd say if Newcastle finished in the top 7, top 6, on the back of 2 good cup runs. You know, the only time we got knocked out in the FA Cup was from City, Barcelona, and City again. How would you look back at this season? That's what I want to know. So, couple more, and I will look at this interview before doing the scouting as well. My man Connor, good to see you. God bless you. This actually is a great question, Connor. What's your thoughts on Hopkinson not backing Howe? This actually leads me to this interview. And you had asked a great question, Connor. Great timing. So let me do this now. All right. And then I'll give you guys my thoughts on this. So this is the interview that Connor's talking about. This is the interview I wanted to show you guys as well. We'll spend some time on it. Oh, let's do it. So in this opening part, Jim White asked the first question in terms of, David Hopkinson answers the questions around Eddie Howe's future. Let me just back this up a little bit because you want to hear Jim's question. So essentially, what Jim is talking about is David Hopkinson essentially given no real firm stance as to whether Eddie Howe is going to be is he backs Eddie Howe to stay or not. And I think this is important, right? And going to Connor's questions, what do I think of this? Because there's a number of angles you have to look at it. And obviously, Simon Jordon, who's a former owner, gives a very, very good, starts off with a very good angle. Jim is saying to him, why is David Hopkinson not giving any firm stance on Eddie Howe, on his future? And the first thing Simon says is, well, what's his remit? Is Hopkinson responsible for the hiring and firing of Eddie Howe? Because if David isn't, how does he answer that question? Right? And he can't answer that question really. If it's a situation where, which is what I think, it's more by consensus by the board. So Jamie Ruman, PIF, Hopkinson, Ross Wilson, maybe a couple of other people, with obviously PIF and the Rubens having that veto power, then Hopkinson doesn't have that. So that's the first thing we've got to think about in terms of that. Does Hopkinson even have the remit to be making that final decision? That's it. That's exactly it. So it's talking about, we know that Hopkinson has obviously experience in football. He was CEO at Real Madrid, but this is commercial experience. He's not a footballing guy, right? So are we even asking the right guy? Does he have the remit? Does he have the footballing experience and knowledge to say, yes, this is the manager to take us forward? No, he's not the manager to take us forward, right? And by himself, he doesn't. Hopkins, in my opinion, he doesn't, right? He's a very good commercial guy, but he's not a football guy to be able to make those type of decisions. So just before that, I thought that was really interesting. Where what he's talking about is David Hopkins. Like I said, David Hopkins and Eddie Howe sat down and discussed, the future. Do they, what it looks like? Newcastle without Europe, in Europe, and everything else. And Simon makes the point of this actually shows Eddie Howe in a very, very good light. It's not every manager that a CEO can sit down with and have this level of conversation with. Not every manager is able to comprehend or fully grasp what it means. We just discussed SCR and PSR and in Europe, out of Europe, what it all boils down to. Not all, I'm still learning what what that means. Some of you are still learning. Some of you know better than I do, or better than other people. Some of us are still learning it. But he sat down with Eddie, and that shows a lot in terms of where and how they regard Eddie in that. So before I get to that kind of question of what do I think of it, there's the number of things that Simon highlighted is whether Hopkinson not having a stance on it. Does he have a remit on it in the first place? Can he make that decision himself, or is it down to the ownership? I suspect it's the ownership. Does Hopkinson have the experience? Does footballing actual on the field understanding what football managers are, what it all means, tactics, performance stats, and everything else? I don't think that's his. I don't think that's his. I don't think that is his main skill and experience. It's in other areas, right? And the fact that and so that's why Hopkinson can't just sit down and say to people, yes, I'm staying with him, and no, I'm not staying with him. But the fact that he's discussed, Hopkinson sat down and discussed with Eddie Howe what the kind of the intricacies and also the wider picture, the vision with SCR and everything else, kind of shows you where Newcastle stand. Now, I think Jim White further presses the point home in terms of why isn't essentially why isn't Hopkinson answering the question on SCR, and it kind of reveals other things around it. So I want to make sure I kind of show that and discuss it with you guys as well. So let me see. Do I take this? Here we go. So it brings up other points as well.
He's talking up Eddie there. I don't have a stance now.
So they just saw an interview. They reminded themselves of the interview they had with David Hopkinson a couple of months ago, where he was talking about the vision of the club and him backing Eddie Howe. And Jim White goes back to him and says, why was he able to back Eddie Howe then, but he's not backing him now?
He's saying, I don't have a stance on Eddie. We're not looking to make a change at the moment. I mean, that's a significant change in tone in a matter, Simon, of days.
Well, take him at his word. Don't watch what people say, watch what they do. So we'll watch what you do, because we'll see if you're around in 2030.
And I think that's quite significant. I like Simon's opening salvo, shall we say, about that. Let's watch what you do. Let's see if you're around, by the time this vision, because the vision I've talked about with you guys before, that David Hopkinson was talking about, that the owners have by 2030, 2031 or 2032, something like that. It's gone from being one of the top teams, being known as one of the elite teams, to then, you know, winning the Premier League, to then saying competing for the Premier League. So that's changed a little bit, right? But the main point what Simon's talking about is, let's see if you're here. Let's see by your actions, because you're talking a lot. Let's see by your actions if you're here to see this vision come to pass. If you're here at the end of 2032. And if we look at our, not so much of our CEO, because obviously our CEO, the previous one, had blood cancer, unfortunately. God bless him. I pray for him to have healing, hopefully recover from that. But when it comes to our sporting directors, as you guys know how I feel about them, Paul Mitchell, who ran away 24 hours before our transfer window started, Dan Ashworth, who betrayed the club, talking to Manchester United while still having access, not telling our owners, and still having access to our scouting data. And so Simon makes a good point. Are you still going to be here because your predecessors haven't been here?
I don't know whether this is a management style that is effective or whether it's going to achieve the outcomes. I think it's playing to the gallery. We're deeply wounded by the Sunderland loss. Right.
So and I think that's another great point. Some of you guys would have heard him talking about, David Hopkinson talking about, hey, you know, not making a stance, but saying, hey, that Sunderland loss, we're deeply wounded by it. And he says, and Simon says, I think he's playing to the gallery, meaning to Newcastle fans. And I agree with that. I do think that statement was playing towards Newcastle fans. You know, he can't just say, oh, that Sunderland loss didn't mean anything. He was there. He heard the blues throughout the ground. And if he wants to continue walking around Barracks Road, sitting in the executive end of the Newcastle without being booed at, he's going to talk about saying that Sunderland loss was unacceptable and everything else. But I think that's playing to the gallery, in my opinion. And Simon Jordon identifies that.
You finished sixth in the league, you'd carry the baggage of the Sunderland lost all season, would you? No, you wouldn't. You forget about it. You go, can't have that happen again, by the way. So that little bit is for the benefit of the fans. That's ingratiating with, I feel, the way you do. Oh, you do, dear?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
The fact is that you lost to Sunderland and you move on and try to fry bigger fish. Next year, we'll see.
And that's it. That's exactly it. Next year you move on and you try to bag bigger fish. So in answer to your question, Connor, I just wanted to remind myself, what's your thoughts on Hopkinson and not backing Eddie Howe? I don't think it's Hopkinson's remit to hire and fire Eddie Howe. I think that's part of a broader hierarchy who are in charge of that. I also don't think Hopkinson has the experience and the understanding of football management in that way to be able to make that decision himself. Hence why I don't think it would have been right for him to back Eddie Howe. I think he played to the gallery when it came down to this, talking about Sunderland, because it's probably a wise, some might say cunning move to make sure, obviously, he's in good graces of the Newcastle fans. So I add no particular weight to it. I don't think it means that, that based on that interview alone, Eddie Howe's future is in jeopardy. I think if Eddie Howe qualifies for Europe this season, it only helps his cause to be able to stay on at Newcastle and see the future going forward. Because as you can see, under SCR, everything is very future focused. And if Newcastle don't qualify for Europe, it reduces their revenue and their ability to spend money. And they might be forced to find a manager who can do better with the squad that they have. I've said it before, and I think I've said it on the show, is that, yes, there are many mitigating circumstances. And this is why I back Eddie Howe. The the crazy transfer window that we had. Big part of that is because our sporting director ran away. The other parts were the fact that PIF, when it came down to actually getting deals over the line, we had to wait for someone from PIF to give the final approval, and that took ages. That now has become localized, which is what the words of David Hopkinson, meaning that now all deals, transfer deals, are going to be approved by the board themselves here in Newcastle, right? Or the board that's part of Newcastle here, by the Rubens, representative of PIF, I imagine Wilson, Hopkinson here. So whatever deals presented here, this is the player, this is the transfer fee, this is the wages, yes or no. Rather than wait for a call back from PIF, they can make it here. I think all that's going to make a difference. But that's what hampered us in our transfer deals last summer. This summer, he's got the full backing and the support of all of the infrastructure. However, despite all those mitigating circumstances, it is my personal view that Newcastle should be 8 or 11 points better off than where they currently are this season. If we take into account the fact that we lead the table for most points lost from winning positions. Now, which is 22 points, we've lost 22 points from winning positions. Even if you half that, right, you give mitigating circumstances, maybe the quality of team like Chelsea when they came back from 2-0 down, fine, right? Even if you half that and you make it 11 points, right? It's still considerable. It would still put us, if we put it here, if we look at the table again, 8 to 11 points, if we go back to the table here, Newcastle are on 42 points currently. If Newcastle had 8 more points, we would be on 50 points. We would be comfortably in 6th. Right? If we had 11 more points, we'd be on 51 points, we'd be 5th, fairly comfortably. And if you think back at games like I mentioned, 2-0 up against Chelsea, then getting it 2-2. 2-0 up against a very poor, now fighting relegation, Tottenham side, and then going back to 2-2. The Everton game was breathtakingly bad. Breathtakingly bad. In terms of, I know we weren't winning, but the individual errors, getting it back to 1-1, then losing the lead after 2 minutes anyway. Everton, Brentford home and away, Sunderland home and away, West Ham, who are fighting relegation again, the away game, going up 1-0 up against them and still finding a way to lose that game. It's bad, man. That is bad. As much as I back Eddie Howe and everything else on top of that, we had a good team out there during that time. Despite the schedule and everything else, that is bad. And I think I'm being fair when I say I feel like despite all the mitigating circumstances, I think Newcastle are still 8 to 11 points behind. And even if you look at the underlying metrics, the XG versus the XGA, goals created and goals created against, and the difference between that on the underlying metrics, Newcastle will be 7th. So I think this final 7 games with the 3-week break, with players coming back like Marley and Guimaraes, with the 1 game a week, Eddie Howe has a fair shake, in my opinion, in terms of, and I think 4 of those games, if we look at, let me go back to it in terms of Newcastle fixtures, 4 of those games would be Newcastle playing at home. So let me just double check here, make sure you guys can see that. Yeah, you can see it. I'm going to get to the... so let's get to the fixtures. So next we play Crystal Palace away. And they're still in Europe. They got a smaller squad than us. We're playing Crystal Palace away on the 12th of April. 12th of April? When does internationals finish? When do internationals finish? Let me just double check. When do international friendlies finish? International friendly schedule. When do they finish? When do they finish? When is the last? I can't even see here. When is it? When is it? When do they finish? If anybody knows. When do they finish, guys? International friendlies. It doesn't say here. Let me just say, when is England's... Let me see on the sofa score. When is England's last game? I'll use that as a benchmark. Let me see this. Okay, so England play Costa Rica. No, that's in June. Fixtures. Are England down now? Is everybody coming back home? Are the friendlies finished? It looks like the friendlies are finished. If you guys can confirm with me, it looks like the friendlies are finished, right? So that means Eddie Howe is going to have over, roughly 15 days, something like that, 14, 15 days to be able to set things right with his team. He's got a fair shake. He's got a fair shake to try and get into Europe, in my opinion. All right, so let's read the chat and see what folks are saying. And hopefully we'll spend the last 15 minutes on the scouting profile for goalkeepers. So, yeah. We've got to get into Europe. Dave says, I'm not on Eddie Howe out, but I do have issues with how when he bought Watermard, and then because he's not quick, he plays him out of position. Another reason with DOF, and maybe he will shine again. Remember, all I have to say about Voldemort is that Eddie Howe's priority was João Pedro, then it was Ekatike, then it was Benjamin Sesko. That's what a sporting director was supposed to be doing. So I don't really blame him for that. Voldemort was like fourth, fifth striker. Still talented, still great, but he wasn't highest in our priorities. Ches says, James, that's a fair shout. Oh, you talking to James, sorry. Big up Kev, God bless you. He says, Eddie's very reluctant to lose Callum Wilson, Lascelles and Namiran back in 2024. What we tried to sell Callum Wilson to Saudi club and he wouldn't go. Same with Almiron. Almiron refused to go to Saudi. And he refused to go to another American club. He wanted to go to Atalanta only. And Lascelles, how many teams were really in for him? Remember, he's almost gone on a free to Leicester. So maybe the cover version is Eddie Howe didn't want him to go. Maybe he didn't. But I don't think it's all on Eddie, that one. Adrian says, I think we'd help ourselves if we didn't have to worry about developing our manager along with everything else. At the same time, it is this manager who's developed us, who's given us multiple Champions League qualifications, multiple finals and semi-finals in domestic leagues, and the trophy. And developed players, turned careers around. So it's a bit of give and take for me. Connor says, Lee Ryder said we have around 100 million to spend this summer plus any player sells money. I think everybody's guessing today. We're guessing as well. I think, and what does that mean? Is that spread over cost? I don't know. I don't think it's I don't think it's everyone's looking for a set number. I don't think it's a set number like that. Is it 100 million if we keep all of our players and just buy particular other players, or make one player sell? It depends. It depends. I think it changes. Kaz says, finally some ambition by the club. Howe has shown that he can't hack fixture congestion with Europe. Is it Howe or is it the squad? And how far off is he? He's 7 points behind a Champions League spot. If Newcastle finish in Europe, and this season, it's two seasons running in Europe, plus the fairly good cup runs we've had in Champions League and League Cup. I don't know. I think it's a little bit harsh with the depth and quality of our squad to say he can't hack it. If Eddie Howe had the same size squad in terms of quality and depth as Arsenal or Man City, does he finish a little bit higher? If Eddie Howe could buy Gahey and Semenyo in January, does that boost Newcastle's chances? Are we a little bit higher up the league? I think we are. Ches says, Philip, to answer your question, if Newcastle finish in the top 7 or 6 on the back of our cup runs, I consider it a successful campaign. So would I? Especially since our Champions League campaign brought us in massive revenue. I fully agree. Ches says, I don't think Hopkinson is refusing to back Eddie. Remember that this is on the end of a disastrous derby loss. You can't say he 100% backs Eddie, otherwise people would accuse the owners of no ambition. Yeah, I think he's been tactful, but he's damned if he does, or he's damned if he doesn't, really, isn't it? Connor says, Connor says, to me, Hopkinson is implying that if the next 7 games go badly, he won't qualify any European, then how will go. I think there's a possibility for that. I didn't get that from it. You can't hear this audio. I just got this. Guys, tell me you could. I've been speaking for a long time. I hope you guys have been hearing me. Jeez Louise. Philip is not playing for us. Oh my word. I hope you guys have been hearing me. Are you telling me you guys haven't been hearing me all this time? Someone please tell me in the chat you can hear me. Please tell me in the chat you can hear me. Kaz says sporting directors left because Howe is a nightmare to work with. Not true. Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth had a very, very good relationship. It's Dan Ashworth and Amanda Stavely who didn't. And in regards to Paul Mitchell, where we had a bad relationship, Eddie Howe was on holiday. Eddie Howe was on holiday when the transfer window was opened. He can't touch or affect Paul Mitchell in any way. It was Paul Mitchell's chance to shine. So whatever Eddie Howe did or didn't do, in my opinion, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Ches. Thanks, Connor. I was worried. I was like, I can't believe this. I've been talking all this time. I was like, it was my mic off all this time. Jeez Louise. Yeah, so for me, whatever Eddie Howe did or did not do to Paul Mitchell, there's no account for Paul Mitchell leaving the club 24 hours before the transfer window started. That's neglect of duty. Connor says losing to Sunderland twice in the season is unacceptable for any manager and should be questioned extensively. So yes, but I remember a time where it was acceptable because we weren't a good team. It was acceptable in the sense of not acceptable to the fans, but it was acceptable because we weren't a good team. I remember us getting knocked out to second and third division teams for the FA Cup third round. We'd expect to get people would say, "Oh, I got an easy run. You're playing a third, this team from the Conference League," and we all knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and we all knew that there's a good chance we're going to get knocked out here, and we would. So I don't know, standards have changed, but I agree. Like, Sunderland are not a good team as Newcastle. And I've counted especially the home game in St. James's Park as one of the games when Newcastle should have got points. Just says oh no, so that's not to me. Kaz says losing 22 points from winning positions is an indictment on the head coach below average in-game management. Yeah, like I said, I've got 8 to 11 points. I think some of it again, small squad, individual errors. If you look at Newcastle's underlying metrics, Eddie Howe sets the team up to win. There's been too many poor performances, individual poor performances, and form that have really hampered us. Kaz says Joe Linton was left wing versus Everton, Gordon 9, Voldemort in midfield. Can't blame individual errors for shocking team selections. So yes and no, because even against Everton, I think Joe Linton got an assist playing left wing. Now, and that's not me saying Joe Linton should play left wing. But if we're saying we're blaming Howe for individual errors there, are we then also giving Howe credit for Joe Linton getting the assist? So it kind of works both ways. Big up, Sam. Good to see you. Always a privilege to see our opposition fans on the channel. Salute to you, sir. God bless you too. Connor says, Howe is too cautious as a manager. He don't take many risks. When losing, he panics and is very rash in-game management. Yeah, that could be. Let me go down because I want to finish the show with a scouting profile. Glad. Thank you guys for replying, by the way. Yes, getting knocked out by Stevenage was a low. Remember them days? Remember them days, guys? I remember those days. Getting you knocked out the FA Cup by Cambridge at St. James's Park was a low. Do you guys remember those days? Now, this season, we've got knocked out Champions League Barcelona. I'm not saying this is great, by the way. I'm not saying, it's great getting knocked out by elite clubs. But at least we're not getting knocked out by Stevenage, right? I remember we had a hard run in the, I think, League Cup. We only played, not League Cup, FA Cup. Is it the FA Cup we played only Premier League teams, I think? So, City twice are the domestic cups, and then obviously Barcelona the Champions League. So I guess that we're moving in different company, shall we say? Now we get City in every cup. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, but yeah, keep on sending your messages about SCR, about Eddie Howe, and let me know. I want to spend the last 10 minutes. I want to do this scouting profile of goalkeepers that have been linked to Newcastle United. What are your thoughts on it? Because I think, first of all, that the goalkeeping position is one of the few positions we have where we're actively looking for an upgrade, right? Now, I know there's this other gentleman, Robin Risser, that's been linked to us, but I didn't have too much time to research him and I didn't want to rush it. James Trafford is one goalkeeper we know a lot about. Obviously, we're very close to signing him. Partly it was our fault, but a big part of him was also him waiting for Man City to sign him, which is what happened, and obviously didn't work out for him, or isn't working out for him, although he is a League Cup winner. He's again been linked to us. Apparently, we're in poor position. I'll say from the beginning, and I want to get you guys' take. I'm going to talk about obviously James Trafford, and we're going to be talking about Bart Verbruggan, right? Who are also very strongly linked with as well. Both keepers are 23 years old, so young. Both keepers are huge in height. James Trafford is 6'6", so 1.97 centimeters tall, and Mr. Bart Verbruggan is 6'4", 1.94 centimeters tall. Now, it's going to be a bit difficult to measure the metrics because James Trafford has played very few minutes for City in the league. In the League Cup, yes, but not in the league. That's why you see league appearances 3, whereas Verbruggan has played 31 league appearances. So when we go to DaraMB, I'm going to be using stats from James Trafford playing for Burnley last season, where he had an outstanding season. We're going to match them up a little bit later. And from those league appearances, it's going to be unfair to compare again because Trafford's got 1 clean sheet, Verbruggen's got 7. I mean, how do you even account that? Pass completion is no. I'm going to wait on the metrics a little bit, but you got a kind of a fair understanding of where they're coming from, right? Obviously, Trafford we've got more historical links to. The move for City hasn't quite worked out for him because on the back of buying him, they've then bought Donnarumma, and Donnarumma has been their number 1 goalkeeper. And Trafford has been very vocal about how he's not too happy about that and that he's looking for an opportunity. I'll give my thoughts towards the end around Trafford and Verbruggan, but I want to get you guys' thoughts on which keeper you prefer as I go along. From what you've watched, from what you've seen, from what you're getting from the metrics. So I gave you kind of a broad outline in terms of both keepers, but I want to first look at their contracts. So just to kind of understand where things are. So Verbruggan is currently on just over 2 million per year. So he earns, if you include bonus, I'm going to include bonuses in these weekly wages, right? So Verbruggen's on about 43,750 per week at Brighton. This includes bonuses. His contract runs out in 2028, so he's still got 3 years left, which puts Brighton in a very strong position when it comes to obviously negotiations. And obviously, he's 23 years old. James Trafford obviously only just signed his contract with City. And this ends in 2030. James Trafford is currently on 4,800,000 per year, so nearly twice as much as Verbruggan. He is on a weekly wage, including bonuses, of 93,750. So, like I said, twice as much money as Verbruggan. And this is the part where I'll say this is that when Trafford has been previously linked to Newcastle, when the links resurfaced around Trafford, some of the counter links have been saying that because of his wages, new wages, it's difficult for Newcastle to see whether they'll bring him back in, whether they'll kind of go in for him again. You guys let me know if you think Newcastle are just bluffing or not. Is 93,750 per week too high for a 23-year-old goalkeeper? Verbruggan, for instance, on 43k. There's more kind of to play around with, but are we not going to end up having to pay him something similar to what James Trafford is going to get paid? Are the long-term benefits of a first-class upgraded goalkeeper not worth that much money? I personally think it is. So I'm kind of on the fence about how serious Newcastle are about, those wages. They might be very serious, obviously, considering the new SCR and everything else. We'll see. Right. So I wanted to point this out. The top of the list for both goalkeepers, you're going to see this for James Trafford. Both of them, their injury records are phenomenal. And what I mean by phenomenal is that they haven't missed a game for injury. In fact, you're going to see James Trafford in the moment. He's had no injuries. But for Verbruggan, he had a virus in 2023 where he missed 3 days, but he didn't miss a game. So he came back and still play, and he obviously after the virus and played, but he didn't miss it. So I don't know whether he still played or he had the game, got the virus during the week, came back and still played. But essentially, both keepers have an outstanding, clean bill of health as well. So they're both young, very, very healthy, injury-free goalkeepers. I wanted to show you both their heating maps. This is Verbruggan's, you can see there, and you can see James Trafford's there. Very, very, very similar. We know that they're both ball-playing goalkeepers, and that they're obviously also work well as sweeper keepers as well. They spend a lot of time off their off their lines because they're really good off the ball as well. And so you can see by the heat map, and we've talked about it in terms of tactical situations before, where having a goalkeeper who can essentially join the midfield, and be an extra man really, really helps Newcastle in terms of being able to outnumber the opposition, especially in that first phase of play. Because if you outnumber them in the first phase of play, you can then generally outnumber them in the second phase of play. There's a ripple effect into the third phase of play, where if you're very good, obviously you can get to the opponent's half whilst always using a spare man. It's kind of what Anthony Gordon complained about, that we didn't do enough of when we played Sunderland the last time previously, but we just weren't using our spare man. So that's part of our own team's ability to grow. But what Bart Verbruggan and both James Trafford provide is that ability on the ball to act as a super keeper as well, and to essentially, to help us to play out from the back, and to become a better side in possession, to further improve on our build-up play, because our build-up play isn't too bad, but to also to be able to add to it. Now, I need to take this off, but I focused my actual the actual kind of profile on Bart Verbruggan. I didn't get enough time to do Trafford, but we've talked about Trafford before, but we'll add bits here and there about him. But before I kind of focus in on Bart Verbruggan and what kind of goalkeeper he is, because I've got a very helpful scouting report from 2023, when he kind of first joined Brighton, but it gives you a good kind of take of him as kind of in his kind of when he first started out. And we're going to be able to see by his metrics compared to Trafford how he's developed. So before we get into that, let me just see what you guys are saying about both goalkeepers. I'll be keen to see. Ches is saying, I like Trafford, but not sure we can afford him. And that's what the reports have been saying, as well as all the other positions we need. I'd go for Robin Rizza of Lens. A lot of people have been talking about him. High ceiling, 20 years old, cheaper, decent fee, hell of a stopper. Well, I'll compare his metrics on DaraMB a little bit. I feel a bit unfair doing it because you want to add context and everything else, but we'll see what we get. James says, I've watched more Bart than I have of Trafford. Me too. No, actually, a bit of both, actually, but I have seen a lot of Bart quite often myself as well. Connor says, I can see us getting Trafford if Man City get Tino. There's a lot of deals there. There's a bit of there's an opportunity to do a deal. Like, we want your player, you want our player. Let me know what deal you'd settle for, Connor and others, because there's a lot of kind of player plus cash deals being offered. Would you take, for instance, Trafford? Would you sell Tino for Trafford plus anything between 30 to 40 million? Let me know, guys. I'll be keen to hear. Ches says, oh, okay, so that's a different conversation. So James says, James says, goalkeeper Bart situation, you're looking around 85,000 for a main goalkeeper option for a week. I think so. I think we have to pay out for an upgrade for sure. James says, I'm personally not a big fan of Trafford. For me, he's not a good enough possessor of the ball. Really? Okay, we're going to look at the stats to see how it looks. You mean not a good distributor? All right, yeah. Clarify that for us if you can, James. Ches says, still a decent comparison, Philip. I get that you can't compare players playing in different leagues. I like to kind of, because I also like to compare teams as well to kind of get the contents of where they're playing. So I don't know too much about Lons. I'll see what we can do, actually. I'll see what we can do. So Dave has gone for the offer. James has gone Trafford plus 30, 40 million. No chance. More like 60 million. Wow. So how much do you think Tino's worth? You think Tino's worth 90 million? I don't think we can get 90 million. I'll be surprised if we got that deal, Dave. I think we take it and run. So let me read this profile of Trafford before we do the wrap up. Not of Trafford. It's not of Trafford. It's of it's not Trafford. It's Verbruggan. Let me just zoom in a little bit on this. Right. So this is obviously 2023. I want you guys to keep in mind on that. He was 20 years old at this time. He was bought for 16.3 million. And he was so the authors of the so I'll talk about the authors in a moment. And his role was he's known as a modern sweeper keeper, hence why we saw those heating maps, a lot of heat outside his penalty box. So again, credit to Andy Jones, Andy Naylor, and Matt Podrowski, who created the scouting profile. So essentially, this is what they've said about Verbruggan. Verbruggan is the quintessential Robert De Zerbi goalkeeper. Obviously, Robert De Zerbi was in charge at the time, and specifically recruited to act as the trigger for building play from the back, which is what Newcastle are looking for. A technically elite, proactive keeper. He combines a massive physical frame with the composure of a deep-lying playmaker, designed to bypass opposition presses through verticality, so getting the ball over. So already you know why Newcastle want him. Key attributes. He's got elite line skipping distribution, so breaking lines essentially. Aggressive starting position. You saw the heat map. He spends a lot of time outside of his box. Athletic shot stopping, which is what's been missing from our goalkeepers. Despite his height, he displays remarkable reflexes and split-second decision-making. He is particularly effective for using his entire body to block close-range efforts and recovering quickly for second save opportunities. That's good. And finally, calmness under pressure. So he exhibits a lot of composure in and outside of his penalty box. If you've ever seen him when he's playing with the ball outside the box and players bearing down on him, he's very, very good at that. Very, very good. So pros and cons. So the pros are playmaking. He's very good at that. Excellent at ball distribution. Physicality. Blessed with a massive wingspan and height. Aerial command. Strong hands. Prefers catching over parrying. Eddie Howe loves those type of goalkeepers. And reflexes. High level athleticism and recovery speed. Again, we're lacking that with Pope. Especially. Weaknesses. Inexperience at the time. This is 3 years ago. Now he's got experience, so that's not an issue. Overambitious, occasionally mistimes challenges in traffic. Let's see if he's got a little bit better over that. Risk over time. Risk profile can force passes into limited spaces, leading to turnovers. That is true. Decision weight can put teammates in difficult situations. That is also true, but that's part of the risk that you take from playing out the back. So the final verdict is that Verbruggan is a trademark Brighton signing, scouted for a specific tactical system with massive potential for value multiplication. Well, it's going to cost between 40 to 50 million. While growing pains are expected, remember this is when he was 20, due to his age, his ability to excel as a pivot and anchor high-line defense makes him the ideal successor for a modern Premier League era. And this is exactly what Newcastle need, a modern Premier League goalkeeper. And let me know what you guys' thoughts are on that. I'm going to go as quickly to DaraMB and I have a look at him. Fast forward now. There's a couple of things I want to look at first of all. Where do I want to start? I feel like I want to start with the teams first to kind of understand the context of what they're playing in. Compare teams first. before we get to the players, if that makes sense. So I want to, if you know, you want to understand the team that you're playing with, right? Where those players are coming from, so you understand why they got the metrics that they have. Here we go. So I'm going to show you guys can see that. Yeah, you can. All I want to be able to show, I want not to dwell on it too much. This is Man City 2020. Excuse me. And the thing is, Trafford doesn't play with him, so I'm probably going to have to use Burnley. But this is Man City, obviously high possession team. Hence why you need a modern goalkeeper. Obviously, they got Donnarumma doing that, and he adds this to the idea around obviously kind of being able to save. It's a bit different for them. It's interesting why they're not using Trafford for that. But if you look at Burnley from last season, where Trafford was playing, Burnley 23-24, this is them in the pink. Or actually, they can't do Burnley 23. They that's the Championship Burnley, isn't it? When Trafford played for them last time. So I can't even use that comparison. I can't even get the Championship Burnley on here. So it's a difficult one to kind of see where Trafford's playing into. He can't get into this Man City side. We prefer, obviously, I think the experience and the shot quality of a Donnarumma. And we're going to actually, as well, we might match him up with Donnarumma, actually. So let's look at Trafford first. I was going to look at Verbruggan, but let me look at Trafford first. So first, this is Man City. Then, obviously, we're going to look at Brighton, if we match them up to Man City, because they're both modern goalkeepers. You see Brighton very high in the pressing, so they like to get those turnovers. Hence why you got a goalkeeper that's playing outside of his box a lot, where Verbruggan's really, really useful. And then Newcastle are, of course, a high pressing team, because if you look at Newcastle stats as well, we've shown them before, Newcastle stats were also a very high pressing team as well. You can see us here in the yellow. Brighter in the green, Man City are in the blue, we're in the yellow. So you need modern goalkeepers to be able to help push that line further up going forward. All right, so that's the context. Let's have a look at the goalkeepers. Here we go. Share this tab instead. Can you guys see that? All right, so there you go. So Trafford's in the blue here, and Verbruggan's in the yellow. Now, to explain the metrics on the outside, so short, so at the top you got long pass range, long pass success rate. It's typical for it to be that low. It's very difficult, to have a really successful long pass rate. Short percentage pass success rate. Both of them are quite probably at the same level, 71. So Trafford's in the 71 percentile. This is when Trafford played for Burnley. So obviously we're playing. This is for Burnley 24-25 season, last year as well, when they were really successful, versus Verbruggan this season. So it's you have to kind of take certain consideration. This is Championship Burnley with Trafford, and Premier League Brighton with Verbruggan. So short pass percentage success rate for Trafford's 71 percentile. Verbruggan's at 82 percentile. 82 percentile. So, considerably higher, but still both of them are quite elite level. Now, the percentage versus, this is the PS times GA. I can't remember the full abbreviation of that, but essentially it talks about, essentially what it's talking about is it's talking about making saves that you're not expected to make, right? And where you're at with that. And remember, I think Trafford had like an incredible season with Burnley last season, where he had like 13, 14, 15 clean sheets in a row. So he was in the 93 percentile on the back of that. Whereas the Verbruggan is in the 56 percentile. So that's something to think about, in terms of, is Verbruggan, how many games is Verbruggan going to win for us? We say the goalkeeper won the game. Let's see what DaraMB is, because obviously DaraMB is the reason why Trafford can't be in there. Wow. This is DaraMB in the Premier League orange. He's in the 90 percentile when it comes to this situation, which is why it's higher than Trafford. So I wonder why that is for him, for Verbruggan. The other situation is save percentage. So these are saves that that you should be able to make essentially. Trafford again is in the 99 percentile, whereas Verbruggan's in the 67 percentile. So I do wonder why Verbruggan's save percentage is considerably lower essentially compared to Trafford. Trafford also is a very elite when it comes to aerials won. Again, this is Championship. How he does in the Premier League is going to be interesting. But Verbruggan is in the 55 percentile, quite average in my opinion. When it comes to that interception, both of them are in the 29, 21 percentile. You don't expect goalkeepers to be doing too much interceptions, right? Passes made. Both of them passes completed essentially. So both of them are in the 90 percentile for that, which is good, which is elite. We know that they're not always safe passes to make, but they're excellent ball playing goalkeepers. But in the areas where it counts for me, and it's difficult to say because we haven't seen Trafford fully in the Premier League, so it's a little bit unfair. But in areas where it counts, aerials won for me. Saving goals or saving shots that you're not always expected to save, and save percentage in general. Trafford is a lot higher than him, and he matches Verbruggan in all the other essential stats that we want, which is shot percentages and passes as well. I wasn't expecting to see this, but again, this is Trafford in the Championship. What's Trafford like in the Premier League? Because last time he was in the Premier League. In fact, let me see Trafford last time in the Premier League, if I can get this. So Trafford in 23-24 season when Burnley got relegated. Let me take this. Let me take off Championship Trafford. Okay. So let me know what you guys think of this. Let me know what you guys think of this. I'm going to walk you guys through it. Now, bearing in mind, this is 2-3 years ago, Trafford would have been same age as Verbruggan, I think. Let me compare Verbruggan to when he was 21 as well, so I'll keep it fairly even. And I'll come back to this as well, Verbruggan. 23-24 season. So Trafford's in the blue, Verbruggan's in the orange. Right? So just focusing on Trafford for a minute, because this is the last time that Trafford is in the Premier League playing for a relegated side. His interceptions are sky high, and that's what you expect for a team that's fighting relegation, that's on the back foot. His aerial won, despite obviously having some issues around that, I thought, are also 100 percentile. Wow. Passes obviously remains high. So again, this depends on the team that you play with. If you imagine Burnley's stats are just incredibly small, like lowest percentile on every count. So he does have, even when the team's back up against the wall, he's doing the aerials, he's doing the interceptions. Where he suffered though, playing for a worse team, Trafford, is in his save percentages and saving shots he's not supposed to save. Those went dramatically down. So did his short pass percentage as well, because Burnley was getting their life pressed out of them as well. Bearing in mind, though, both keepers were 20 years old. Verbruggan here in the orange. Interesting. I can't remember what kind of season Brighton were having in that time, but his interceptions are also pretty high. He's doing quite well there. And passes. And his, if you can see shots that he's not supposed to save, PSGGA, is a lot higher. Is a lot higher than he was before. He's on 67%. He's on 67 percentile, whereas Trafford's on 28 percentile, playing for a less capable team. And his save percentage is fairly stable. It's at 60 percentile. So that's interesting. Because if you look at, let me just take off Verbruggan for a minute. So we've got Trafford at 21 playing for a bad Burnley team in the Premier League. Then you've got Trafford playing for a good Burnley team in the Championship. And the changes are remarkable. Higher on, and this is what happens when you get confidence. Your save percentage goes up, your PSGA goes up, your short passing goes up, your need to intercept reduces. His aerial duels are still high, and his passes are still high. So for me, Trafford comes out, and if he plays for a better team, i.e. Newcastle, I suspect that his metrics would look a lot like this in this green zone. I suspect. Verbruggan is slightly different, because if we look at Verbruggan, there's some good stats here, because he even got his Anderlecht stats, but I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to look at Verbruggan at 21 in the light blue, Verbruggan 22 in the pink, and Verbruggan in the 25-26 season in the orange, right? So blue, pink, orange. So blue is when he's 21, orange is when he's 22, and pink is when he's 23. Orange is, so blue is 21, pink is 22, and orange is 23 years old. I think it's like Brighton have gone through a lot of different phases here, because his long pass and interceptions are a lot higher. His passes always remain consistently high. His pass completion, so that's his thing. No matter how old he is, he's always passing at a very, very, very high rate. His short percentage over time, his short pass percentage has increased over time as well. From 22, 23, it was a lot lower when he was in the 22 percentile when he was 21, and this has increased as he got older from 63 percentile to 22 percentile. So his passing under pressure, I assume, has got higher. However, his PS times GA, which is again being able to save us under pressure, it's going to being able to save shots you're not expected to save. It's pretty up and down. At 21, that was his highest point. Then it 67 percentile. Then it went down to 20. Then he went to 21 percentile at 22, before slowly recovering at 56 percentile. I wonder if that's more to do with Brighton and kind of the changes there. I don't know. So I can't figure out just how good he is at saving, really. His save percentage is fairly the same if you see the blue and pink. So his normal save percentage is when he was 22, he was at 6.9. So he had a bad year when he was 22. He had an awful year when he was 22. But he's back in the 60 plus percentiles. So he went back to blue. Well, he was blue. He was 60 percentile when he was 21. 6.9 percentile when he's 22, before 67 percentile, so getting better. So his overall shot percentage is getting better over time, though he has his ups and downs. Both keepers have been through ups and downs. Both keepers have been through ups and downs. So it's difficult to say, to rank who's at what level. I think Trafford, this is Trafford, obviously Burnley 24-25 season when they were growing great. And this is obviously Verbruggan. It's so difficult to judge them. But let me know what you think, folks. I suspect Trafford is the better shot stopper or the all-round better keeper. But he's also the more expensive keeper, wages-wise. But let me know, guys. Let me know what you think. By the way, speaking of our goalkeepers, let's see how they rank with them before we wrap up the show. Let's bring out Pope this season, and let's bring out Ramsdale this season. So Ramsdale is in the... In fact, let me take over Verbruggan so it's easier. Then I'll bring back the number. Then I'll bring him back. Or should I keep them? Let me keep them. So for you guys' information, Pope is in a dark blue, and Ramsdale is in the pink. In fact, it's a bit difficult to tell from here. Let me take over Verbruggan for a minute. So Trafford, this is the Burnley season, is in the green. Pope is in the blue, and Ramsdale is in the pink. Trafford is better than them at overall save percentage, way better than them, both of them. Nick Pope's save percentage is at 46. He's in the 46th percentile. Ramsdale is in 12th percentile. Aerials 1. Trafford is better than both. Considerably, well, it is championship, so that's the difficulty there. Pass completion, way higher as well. Short pass completion is again way higher. Again, this is championship Trafford, but let me compare Trafford when he was with Burnley in the Premier League relegation Burnley. Now Trafford again is in the red here, and he's still better at them than both keepers at passing, just about better than Pope at interceptions, aerials 1. And that's for a relegation Burnley. And we know that he's probably better at them at overall save percentages and PSG. We really need to upgrade on our goalkeepers. That's Pope. That's Ramsdale's in the pink, Pope's in the red. Pope's best qualities is interceptions. Ramsdale, aerials and passes overall. We really need to upgrade our goalkeeper. This is Verbruggan. So this is comparing all these goalkeepers this is comparing Verbruggan, Pope, and Ramsdale in this season. Verbruggan's in the yellow. He's eclipses both of them when it comes to passes, short pass percentages, even saving shots you're not necessarily supposed to save. Overall save percentage as well. He's fairly even with all of them on aerials 1, so it's not too far different from them. Pope is doing the more interceptions. I think this is probably because he has to. But both Trafford and Verbruggan provide, significantly more quality. If I had to choose though between Verbruggan and Trafford, for me, it would be Trafford. It would be Trafford. Let me know what you guys think before we wrap up. James says, what I've seen from his distribution, it's mainly long balls, and I don't think this is the way that Eddie wants to go anymore. But Trafford, I think he can definitely mix it up there. I think it definitely mix up. Dave says worth 90 all day to Man City, long to Man City. What Tino? I'd be incredible if we did that. I don't think we will. It would be incredible if we did that. Ches says Tino is worth how much? City needs him. They will be the highest bidder, so it depends on their desperation. Yes or no? Like Tino's injury record is not great. Like he's been barely available for us this season. Let me just double check how many minutes Tino's played for us this season. Let me share this tab instead. Can you guys see this? No, you can't see it. How many minutes has Livramento played this season? Because his availability is not good. 25-26. Premier League, right? So Premier League. He's played just over 1,100 minutes. That's about 10 games. Come on. League Cup. He's played 105 minutes. Did he play anything in the FA Cup? Last year, yes. Not this year. Champions League, 300 minutes. So he's played roughly 1,500 minutes for us this season. So 15 games. No one's paying 90 million for a guy that plays 15 games a season in all competitions. So, but let me know what you guys think. Maybe they would. The quality is there, but the availability isn't. Ches says, Dave. He's talking to Dave, sorry. Yes, big up to you, Dave. Thanks for that. Hit the likes while you're watching. Please do, guys. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, folks. That would be incredible. James says, I would personally, if I was ready, I'll be looking at a player like Bart because Eddie has always been a user of a sweeper keeper because that's what Nick Pope is. I think, though, Trafford can do it very well as well. I think Trafford can do it very, very well as well. I don't think there's much separating him and Bart, to be honest. A good point, James. I think you're selling me on Bart. I started off this thinking that Bart is the guy, and he's had 3 seasons solid in the Premier League, to be fair to him. Trafford's got some outstanding qualities. Yeah, he has been. He's been known as a super keeper. Chess says, how much weight do you give XG, Philip? Genuine question. Too many variables for me. Different squad, different league, different opposition. All means a very mixed data set. Yeah, so I use it as an indicator to know the quality of opportunities that that someone creates, and XGA as well. So I use it as an indicator. I don't necessarily use it as the be all and end all. You use your eyes, obviously, and everything else, as well as using other stats to use it. But I do use XGA. Obviously, I use it in sites like, for instance, what do you call it? I forgot the name of the stats analyst. Is it data analyst? Something like that. You get to see the quality of the shots in different areas, and you can go and you can see. But when you say how much weight, do you mean like how much do I use it to kind of say whether a team is good or not? I kind of use it to see as an indicator to say whether, as an underlying metric, to say whether a team is performing, added to results, added to other stats, individual player performances. But I give it some weight, I suppose is the short answer. Ches, it works in baseball, but too many moving parts in a free-flowing game like football. I hear what you're saying, and you have to be wise, like you said, in terms of how you use it. Suggested numbers that I got from Tino was 75 to 80 million. I'll be surprised. Well, no, I think not surprised. I've got him I've got us between 60 and 70 mil. I think we'll do well to get 70 mil total package. Chess says, yeah, we all saw you fall in love with Trafford in slow-mo, Phil. I didn't expect it. Like I said, I was a Verbruggan guy. Yeah, I was a Verbruggan guy for real. But there's something about Trafford, for sure. Question. Thanks, Ches. Right, folks. So we had a real fantastic. We had to have an in-depth show because we were talking about some important stuff and stuff that I needed a lot of answering, essentially. And I hope you guys enjoyed the show. We talked about all things, obviously, SCR, the new SCR versus PSR. Is it good? Is it good in terms of, is it going to make what sort of impact is it going to make for us in the short term? Not as good in the short term. The impact will be limited. Put it that way. But I think in the longer term, for me, in my view, it's definitely. I think it's a better direction than PSR, where SCR, like I said, is a forward-looking type of model where it relies on you're reliant. It depends on your ability to generate revenue, which only encourages owners to, get more sponsorship deals, build training grounds, build, but also on the field success, continuous Champions League and Europe qualifications, and I think you get rewarded for it a lot more. You certainly get rewarded for it a lot more than you would on the PSR. PSR rewards player sales, and we don't want to be just selling players all the time just to fit the bill. We don't want to do that with Elliot Anderson and Yankumba Minte. So I think that's the main thing for me. So I think I give SCR I give SCR like a cautious thumbs up. That led us on to, obviously, to Eddie Howe. Speaking of performances on the pitch, why didn't David Hopkinson publicly back him? And my overall view is that David Hopkinson isn't qualified to back him and doesn't have the remit either to be able to sack and hire either. But he also had to play to the gallery and had to manage fans' expectations by saying, that some of the result really hurt him. The next 7 games for Howe are really, really crucial, though. Despite the mitigating circumstances, which I agree with, and I still personally believe that Eddie Howe as an elite manager, if I'm being objective and not just on the Eddie Howe in, Eddie Howe out bandwagon, in my personal opinion, we should be 8 to 11 points better off. We should be in either 6th to 5th position from the games that we've had. And I do attribute those points to Eddie Howe. The other points I attribute to the players. It's a rough estimate. He's got 7 games. He's got 21 points to play for. He's got about 4 home games. Most of the teams, apart from Arsenal, are teams that we've been above. Obviously not at the moment, we're in 12th, but we've been above most of those teams going into the season. He's going to have 1 game a week. We've got a better squad than most of the team, again, apart from Arsenal. He's got a huge opportunity to get Newcastle into Europe, and I think the owners will have a huge expectation for him to get into Europe as well, whether it's Europa Conference, Europa League, or by some incredible luck, Champions League. I think the football friendlies are finished now. Let me know, guys, if that's the case. Our next game is on 12th of April. Eddie Howe has 11 days. Well, say all the players come back in the next 48 hours. So say 3rd of April. Eddie Howe has 9 days. 9 days. 8 days minimum. with these players to turn them into a machine for the last 7 games. I think it's important that he does it. And we'll see where we take it from there. Then we did a scouting profile, goalkeeping profile, which I really enjoyed actually talking with you guys about it, where we did a James Trafford versus Verbruggan. You guys saw me slowly fall in love with Mr. Trafford. I thought, I started it off talking about big up Ches is subbed. Good to have you, James. Audio from South Africa. Thank you. Good to see Verburggan. God bless you. I started off as a Verbruggan fan, still am, but I do think, in my personal opinion, there's something about Trafford where I think he edges it. And although I wouldn't mind either keeper coming to Newcastle, to be honest, but for me, Trafford edges it. And a deal would be a good thing for Newcastle. For either of those keepers, there'll be an upgrade. But you guys have been phenomenal. To all of you that stayed from beginning to the end, nearly 3 hours with me, even if you joined the last 5 minutes or you came in halfway, please do like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for all your comments. I've had a fantastic, fantastic evening here with you guys. Really, really enjoyed myself. And as always, folks, make sure you look after each other, and God bless you all. Take care, folks.